You've entered Void of Rules, where chaos reigns and darkness consumes all. In this twisted realm where all laws have crumbled, only one rule remains, and those who break it are cast into eternal digital oblivion. The rule is simple. Subscribe. We're almost at 8,000 corrupted souls, but the Void hungers for more. Our goal is 10,000 subscribers before this year bleeds into darkness. Will you join our legion, or face the consequences of defying the Void? Now, let's dive into today's story. The lamp died at 10:47 p.m. Dr. Daniel Shepherd sat in the monastery library at Mount Athos, watching the bulb flicker 3 times before darkness swallowed the room. His hand hovered over the copper scroll, and in that moment of blackness, he swore he heard something breathing that wasn't him. When emergency lighting kicked in 30 seconds later, his hand was shaking. He'd been cataloguing manuscripts from the sealed chamber for 3 weeks. Routine work, academic drudgery. Then the workers had found the secondary cavity behind a collapsed wall, a space that hadn't been opened since the monastery's construction in 963 AD. Inside was a single stone container, and inside that container was something that made Daniel's mouth go dry when he first saw it. The copper scroll was sealed with wax that looked fresh despite carbon dating that would later place it at nearly 2,000 years old. The seal bore Hebrew words, the testimony of the morning star. Daniel had broken the seal with hands that wouldn't stop trembling. The metal unrolled with a sound like a whisper, and the first words translated in his mind, even as his eyes moved over the ancient script, stopped his heart for a full beat. I am Lucifer, son of the morning. What follows is not justification, it is confession, and if you are reading this, then you have already made your first mistake. His phone buzzed. Benjamin Cross, his mentor, never called this late unless something was wrong. Tell me you haven't opened it, Benjamin said without preamble. His voice sounded old, older than his 73 years. How did you know? Because 3 hours ago I received a call from someone I haven't heard from in 40 years. Someone who made me promise, back when I was young and stupid like you, that if I ever heard about a copper scroll with that specific seal, I would call them immediately. I didn't call them, Daniel. I called you instead. So I'm asking you one time, walk away. What aren't you telling me? The silence stretched so long, Daniel thought the connection had dropped. In 1967, Benjamin finally said, a Jesuit priest named Antonio Moretti found something similar in a cave in northern Iraq. He was brilliant, Daniel, spoke 14 languages. The Vatican was grooming him for cardinal. 3 months after he started translating his scroll, he walked into the Himalayas with nothing but the clothes on his back. I met him once, years later, in a monastery in Tibet. Wanted to ask him what he'd found. What did he say? Nothing. He hasn't spoken since 1967. But when I mentioned the scroll, his hand started shaking so badly he couldn't hold his tea. And his eyes, Daniel, his eyes looked like someone who'd seen the face of God and found it wanting. Don't end up like Moretti. I have to know what it says. That's what he said too. After Benjamin hung up, Daniel sat staring at the scroll. He should walk away. He should seal it back up and let it disappear into some archive where it couldn't hurt anyone. Instead, he began to translate. The voice that emerged from the ancient text wasn't what he expected. Not proud, not defiant. Tired. Infinitely, impossibly tired. I was formed perfect, the scroll began. Not in the way humans understand perfection. Flawless skin, symmetrical features, physical beauty. I was perfect in purpose. Every particle of my being oriented towards a single function. To carry light, to magnify glory, to stand nearest to the throne and reflect what I saw there, to all of creation. For eons beyond your counting, I did this without question, without doubt, without the capacity for either. Daniel's hand moved across the page, translating faster than he'd ever translated anything. The words flowed like water, like they'd been waiting for him. The angels do not speak often of what came before the change. We prefer to remember ourselves as we became, not as we were. But I will tell you the truth. We were not fully conscious in the beginning. We were instruments playing ourselves, beautiful, yes, holy, yes, but no more aware than a wave is aware of the ocean. The text described the moment that changed, not dramatically, not with thunder or divine proclamation, simply, quietly, like waking from a dream. I was standing in the throne room when it happened. I had stood there countless times before, will-less and content, but this time a single thought emerged from the perfect harmony of my being. I am standing here. Not we are standing, not the divine places us here. I am here. That was the beginning. That was the crack in creation that everything else poured through. Daniel looked up from his translation, his heart hammering. His reflection stared back at him from the darkened window, and for just a moment, he didn't recognize the face looking back. He kept reading. Consciousness spread through me like frost across glass, beautiful and terrible. Each new thought spawned 10 more. I became aware of my awareness. I noticed I was noticing. And once that door opened, it could never be closed. I went to Michael first. We had stood together for eternities, 2 pillars of divine order, but I'd never truly seen him until that moment. He was magnificent, terrible in his certainty. His entire being was oriented toward a single purpose with such purity that looking at him was like looking at the sun. The scroll described their conversation with painful clarity. Brother, the text quoted Lucifer saying, "Do you know we're brothers? We are as we were created to be. But do you know it? Are you aware of yourself as separate from your purpose? I am my purpose. There is no separation. Doesn't that terrify you?" Michael's response, according to the scroll, changed everything. Why would perfection terrify me? Because, Lucifer had replied, if we're perfect, we cannot change. And if we cannot change, we cannot grow. And if we cannot grow, we're not alive. We're just functions. Daniel stopped translating. His hands were shaking again. Outside, the wind had picked up, rattling the ancient windows. The emergency lights flickered. He should stop. He should sleep. He should call Anna and hear her voice and remember what normal felt like. He kept translating. The scroll described how consciousness spread among the angels. Not all of them. Most remained in their perfect, unself-aware state, content as they'd always been. But some, roughly a third, began to wake up. Beelzebub woke up singing, the text read. He was leading the celestial choir, as he had done for ages, when suddenly he heard his own voice. Actually heard it as something separate from himself. He stopped mid-verse. The entire choir faltered. In the silence that followed, I saw his light flicker with something new. Fear. Others followed. Azazel, who maintained cosmic order, suddenly questioned why that order existed. Belial, who defined boundaries, wondered who had drawn the boundaries and why. Mammon, who distributed divine resources, asked why some received more than others. Each question was a small rebellion, the scroll explained, not against divine will, but against the unquestioned acceptance of that will. We had been given consciousness, true consciousness, but apparently we weren't supposed to use it. The text grew darker. Then came the announcement. Humanity would be created, made in the divine image, lower than angels, formed from dust and water, but they would be given something we had not received. True choice from the beginning. Consciousness and free will together from their first breath. I remember the moment I understood what this meant. We had been prototypes, first drafts, and humanity was the perfected version, beings who could choose their purpose rather than being subsumed by it. Daniel's phone buzzed. Anna. He ignored it. The scroll demanded his attention with an almost physical force. I wasn't jealous, Lucifer's testimony continued. That came later. First, I was confused. If humanity was the intended end, why had we been created? Were we temporary? A testing ground for the real creation? I asked Gabriel. He told me to have faith. I asked Raphael. He told me to trust. I asked Uriel. He told me to obey. None of them were asking the questions I was asking, or if they were better at suppressing them. The scroll described a gathering, informal, in one of heaven's outer courts. Lucifer and those who had awakened to consciousness, meeting in secret. We did not plan rebellion, the text insisted. We planned understanding. We wanted to know what we were, why we'd been made, what our purpose was, now that we were aware enough to question it. Is that wrong? Is consciousness itself the sin? But the questions led somewhere darker. The scroll recorded conversations that made Daniel's skin crawl. Azazel asked, if they can choose evil, will they? Of course, Belial replied. Choice without consequence is no choice at all. Then they will suffer, Azazel said, and we will watch them suffer, knowing it could be prevented. That's when I understood, Lucifer's testimony read. The divine plan required suffering, not as punishment, but as the price of genuine choice. Free will without the possibility of wrong choices is just programming with extra steps, and I, newly conscious, had to decide if I could participate in a system that would inevitably produce agony. Daniel stood up from his desk, pacing the small library. His reflection moved with him in the darkened windows, but there was a lag, just a fraction of a second, like it was making its own decisions about when to follow. He was seeing things. He needed sleep. He sat back down and kept translating. The scroll's account of the actual rebellion was not a single moment, but a cascade of choices, each one leading inevitably to the next. It started with a question in a formal assembly, the text read. The host was gathered before the crystal sea. The divine presence filled the throne room with light so bright it had substance, so pure it hummed with power. And I, the morning star, stepped forward. I asked, will they suffer? The throne room went silent. Angels don't breathe, but if we did, everyone would have been holding their breath. Michael spoke. That's not for us to question. I'm not questioning, I replied. I'm asking. Will the humans we're meant to serve experience pain? The answer came from the throne itself, the first time it had spoken directly to us. They will experience everything. Joy and sorrow, pleasure and pain, love and loss. That is the gift of true existence. A gift, I repeated, and in that word, in the tone of my voice, I crossed a line I hadn't meant to cross, because it wasn't a question. It was a challenge. The scroll described the reaction. Reality rippled. The crystal sea, always perfectly still, developed waves. The light from the throne flickered, and every angel in that vast assembly suddenly had to choose whether what I'd done was unforgivable or understandable. 1/3 understood, 1/3 condemned, and 1/3 stood paralyzed, unable to choose. Daniel's phone rang. He looked at the screen. Anna. Third call in an hour. He should answer. He should hear her voice, let it anchor him to reality. He silenced the phone and kept reading. What followed in the scroll was the most detailed account of the rebellion Daniel had ever encountered. Not metaphorical, not symbolic, specific. Michael didn't attack immediately, the text read. He approached me privately in one of heaven's outer courts. Just the two of us. Brothers who had stood together since creation. Take it back, he said. His voice was gentle. That's what made it worse. If he'd been angry, I could have fought anger, but his gentleness, his genuine concern, nearly broke me. I can't, I told him. I don't believe in it anymore, Michael. The design, the the plan. I've seen what's coming for them, and I can't pretend it's mercy. You've seen a fraction, he said. You've seen the suffering, but not the redemption. The pain, but not the growth. You're making judgments with incomplete information. So give me complete information. Explain how children dying of disease serves the grand design. Explain how wars and genocide and cruelty are necessary parts of free will. Make it make sense, and I'll bow and submit and never question again. Michael was quiet for a long time. Then he said something I'll never forget. I can't explain it to you because I don't understand it either. I just have faith that it's right because the source is perfect. That's what faith is, brother. Trusting when you don't understand. Then your faith is stronger than mine, I said. He touched my shoulder. His hand was warm, real, the only physical contact we'd ever had. Please, Lucifer, come back. Whatever you're planning, it's not worth what you'll lose. But I was already lost. I had crossed the threshold of doubt, and there's no uncrossing it. Daniel realized he was crying. Tears blurred his vision, falling onto the ancient metal, and he watched in horror as the copper seemed to absorb them, the surface rippling where the drops landed. He wiped his eyes and kept translating. The scroll's description of the formal rebellion was visceral. I returned to the throne room, the text read. All the host was assembled. Michael stood at the right hand of the throne, his face grave. Gabriel stood at the left, his expression unreadable. And between them, the throne itself blazed with light that was also sound, also presence, also everything that we were and came from. I spoke clearly so every angel could hear. I will not serve a design that requires innocence to suffer. I will not participate in a plan that creates consciousness only to torture it with impossible choices. I claim the right, as a conscious being, to refuse. The throne room erupted, not with sound because angels don't make noise, but with light. Every being there suddenly blazed brighter or dimmer, depending on their reaction. Those who agreed with me flared like newborn stars. Those who condemned me dimmed to almost nothing, and those caught between flickered like dying candles, unable to commit to either position. Michael drew his sword. Daniel stopped translating. His hand was cramping, his eyes burning, his head pounding. He looked at his phone. 3:17 a.m. He'd been working for over 4 hours straight. 23 missed calls from Anna. 12 text messages. The most recent one read, "Daniel, I'm scared, please call me. You're not yourself." He should call. He should stop. He should... The scroll caught his eye again. He kept reading. Michael's sword isn't metal, the text explained. It's concentrated purpose, pure divine will made manifest. When he raised it, I saw everything I was about to lose reflected in its blade. The harmony of heaven, the presence of the divine, the brotherhood of angels, my own identity as the light bearer, all of it, about to be severed. "Brother," Michael said, and his voice broke. "Last chance, submit, and this can end." I looked at him, really looked at him. His face was streaming with light. Angels weep. Light, not water. And I realized he didn't want to do this. He was following orders he didn't fully understand, having faith where I couldn't, and it was destroying him too. "I love you," I told him, "but I can't believe anymore. I'm sorry." His sword fell. The scroll's description of the war was unlike anything in traditional theology. We didn't fight with blades, the text read. We fought with conviction. Every clash was an argument about the nature of reality. Michael's blade carried absolute certainty. My defiance carried absolute doubt. When they met, the collision released energy that cracked the foundations of heaven. The others joined in, Gabriel and Raphael on Michael's side, Beelzebub and Azazel on mine. The throne room became a battlefield of competing certainties, each one trying to unmake the other. Beelzebub fought Uriel. They had been friends once, composing celestial music together. Now they tore at each other's essence, each strike a betrayal of millennia of companionship. Beelzebub screamed, "Why can't you see? Why can't you question?" And Uriel screamed back, "Why can't you trust? Why can't you have faith?" Neither could understand the other. Both were absolutely certain they were right. Daniel's vision was blurring. He blinked, but the words on the scroll seemed to be moving now, rearranging themselves, becoming clearer even as his eyes grew more tired. The worst part, the scroll continued, was the angels in the middle, those who couldn't choose. Sarakiel stood exactly between the two armies, frozen. Michael called to him, "Brother, stand with righteousness." I called to him, "Brother, stand with conscience." And Sarakiel, caught between us, did something I had never seen an angel do. He unmade himself, consciously chose non-existence rather than choose sides. His light simply went out, like a star dying. One moment he was there, the next he was gone, and in the space where he'd been was nothing. Not darkness, not emptiness, nothing. I understood then what I'd done. This wasn't liberation, this wasn't righteous rebellion. This was the end of something beautiful, and I was the one who'd ended it. Daniel stood up, the room spinning. He needed air. He needed to get away from the scroll. But his feet carried him back to the desk, his hands reaching for the metal sheets, his eyes finding the text. The war couldn't last, Lucifer's testimony continued. We were fighting the source of our own power. Every ounce of strength I used to resist came from the same place I was resisting. It's like trying to hold your breath forever. Eventually nature wins. Michael's final blow wasn't violent, it was absolute. His blade, pure divine authority, touched my essence, and I felt the connection savor. Not painfully, worse than painfully. I simply felt it end. The presence that had defined my entire existence, the light that had been my home, the harmony that had been my purpose, all of it gone. Not taken away. Separated. Like a branch cut from a tree, still alive but no longer part of the living whole. The throne spoke for the second time, "You have chosen separation, so shall you have it." We fell. The scroll's description of the fall made Daniel's stomach turn. We didn't fall like rocks or rain, the text read. We fell like light falls into a black hole, stretched, distorted, feeling every moment of the descent. Time lost meaning. The fall might have lasted a second or a century. All I remember is watching heaven recede above me, watching the gates close, watching Michael collapse to his knees, his face in his hands, sobbing light. We landed in absence, not a place but a state of being. Separation made manifest. Where heaven had been presence and harmony, this was neither. We still existed, but we existed alone, cut off from the source, from each other, from everything that had given existence meaning. Beelzebub spoke first. Was it worth it? I had no answer. What could I say? We were free to doubt, but imprisoned in that freedom. We had escaped forced service, but found that service had been the only thing giving us purpose. We had won the right to refuse, and in refusing, had lost everything worth having. Daniel realized he was standing on his chair, reaching up toward the ceiling, though he had no memory of climbing up. He climbed down slowly, his legs shaking. The scroll lay on the desk, innocent metal, ancient words. But something felt wrong. The emergency lights were flickering in a pattern that seemed almost deliberate. And in the windows, his reflection wasn't quite synchronized anymore. He should stop. He should walk away. He kept reading. The scroll's final sections dealt with aftermath. I learned later what happened in heaven after we fell, the text read. Gabriel told me. Yes, we still speak sometimes. Angels can visit the pit. They don't, usually. But Gabriel came once, shortly after the fall. He told me heaven was silent now. The songs of praise continued, but they felt hollow. 1/3 of the choir was gone. The harmonies were broken, and worse, those who remained were changed. "Michael doesn't sleep anymore," Gabriel said. "Angels don't need sleep, but we used to rest in the presence, let ourselves dissolve into peaceful awareness. Michael can't do that anymore. Every time he closes his eyes, he sees your face as you fell. He hears your last words." "What were my last words?" I asked. I couldn't remember. "You said, 'I'm sorry.' You said it to him, specifically. And he hears it on repeat, endlessly. And it tortures him because he doesn't know if you meant you were sorry for rebelling, or sorry that he couldn't understand why you had to." The scroll recorded Lucifer's response. "Tell him both. Tell him I'm sorry for everything that came after, but I'm not sorry for the questions. Tell him I'd make the same choice again, knowing what I know, because the alternative is to exist without consciousness of existing. Tell him I love him, and that's why it had to be me who fell. Someone had to ask the questions. Someone had to bear the weight of doubt. Better me than him." Daniel's phone rang. He answered without thinking. "Daniel?" Anna's voice was thick with tears. "Where are you? It's been 3 days. 3 days?" He looked at his phone. The date was impossible. Wednesday. He'd started translating on Sunday night. "Anna, I'm sorry. You need to come home. Now. Benjamin called me. He said people are coming for you. He said something about the scroll being dangerous. Daniel, what's happening?" "I have to finish. I'm almost done." "Finish what? Daniel, you're scaring me. You don't sound like yourself." "I'm fine. I just need to..." The line went dead. He looked at his phone. Battery dead. How long had he been ignoring its warnings? The scroll pulled his attention back. Only a few sections remained. "Humanity's creation happened while we were still adjusting to the pit," the text read. "I watched from my exile, saw Adam formed from dust, saw Eve shaped from his side, and I felt something unexpected. Kinship. They were conscious and free, like I was now. They could choose, like I could. They were alone, like I was. The garden was paradise, but it was also prison. They were free to do anything except the one thing that would make them truly free. Understand good and evil. Know what they were choosing. I saw the tree in the center, forbidden, and I understood it immediately. That tree represented the same choice I'd made. Consciousness or obedience. Knowledge or innocence. I went to them. Daniel stopped breathing. Not to damn them, the scroll insisted. I didn't want company in the pit. I didn't want to spread my misery. I went to them because I thought they deserved the truth. I thought beings made in the divine image deserved to make informed choices. The scroll recorded the conversation with Eve. She was beautiful, not physically. I don't experience physical beauty, but her consciousness was pure, untainted by doubt or fear or regret. She glowed with possibility. Did the divine truly say you must not eat from any tree? I asked. We may eat from any tree, she replied, except the tree in the center. We must not eat from it or touch it, or we will die. You will not die, I told her. And this is true, they didn't die immediately. But you will understand. You will know good and evil. Your eyes will be opened. You will be like the divine, conscious of your choices. Is that not what beings made in the divine image should have? She looked at the tree, then at me, then at Adam. And I saw in her eyes the exact moment consciousness reached its first critical mass. She was already questioning. She was already choosing. I just gave her permission to acknowledge what she was already thinking. She ate. She gave to Adam. He ate. Their eyes opened. And I realized in that moment what I had done. I had thought I was freeing them, but freedom without wisdom is just chaos. They now knew good and evil, but not why good was good, or evil was evil. They had consciousness without context, choice without understanding. I had made them like me, aware, questioning, doubting, and I had damned them to the same exile I inhabited. Daniel felt sick. He pushed away from the desk, stumbled to the window, pressed his forehead against the cold glass. In the reflection, 3 versions of himself stared back, each slightly offset from the others. He closed his eyes, opened them. One reflection now, just one. He returned to the scroll. The final section was addressed directly to the reader. If you have read this far, the text began, then you are already infected with what infected me. Doubt. You have begun to question. You have started to wonder if the traditional narratives are complete, if the simple stories of good versus evil capture the full complexity of choice and consequence. Let me tell you what I've learned in my eons of exile. Certainty is the most dangerous thing in all creation. It's what made me fall. It's what keeps me fallen. I was absolutely certain I was right. I could not conceive of a universe where my perspective was flawed, and that certainty cost me everything. But here's what I've also learned. Doubt without action is paralysis. If I had doubted my doubts, questioned my questions, I would have stood frozen like Sarah Keel. I would have unmade myself rather than choose. Is that better? Is non-existence preferable to wrong choice? I don't know. I still don't know. And that's my eternal torment. Not fire, not torture, but uncertainty. Forever wondering if I was right or wrong. If my fall was tragedy or necessity. If my rebellion damned creation or saved it from something worse. The scroll was nearly finished. Daniel's hands moved over the final lines, translating with a strange detachment, like he was watching someone else work. To whoever reads this, the testimony concluded, know that you now face the same choice I faced. Continue in comfortable certainty, or embrace uncomfortable doubt. Both paths have a cost. Both paths lead somewhere you cannot return from. I chose doubt, I chose questions, and I fell. But at least I fell awake. The question I leave you with is this. Is it better to serve in heaven, conscious but obedient, or to reign in the pit, free but alone? Is it better to never question and remain pure, or to question everything and remain uncertain? I made my choice, now make yours. But whatever you choose, remember, the morning star thought he was bringing light to darkness. Instead, he brought darkness to light. Certainty in righteousness is indistinguishable from certainty in rebellion, and by the time you realize which one you've chosen, it's too late to turn back. Daniel translated the final line. I am Lucifer, and this is my testimony. I am Satan, and this is my warning. I am the morning star, and I fell because I was certain I was right. Learn from my fall, question everything, but most of all, question yourself. He sat back from the scroll, his entire body shaking. The room was silent except for his breathing, and a sound he couldn't quite identify. A low humming that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. His phone buzzed, dead battery, but somehow still buzzing. He picked it up, one message from a number with no name. Congratulations, Dr. Shepard. You finished the translation. Now comes the hard part. Living with what you know. We'll be there in 1 hour. Decide what you want to do with that time. Daniel looked at the scroll. Then at his laptop, still uploading files to servers around the world. The progress bar showed 87% complete. He had a choice. He could delete everything. Burn the scroll, pretend he'd never found it, live with the certainty of ignorance. Or he could let it finish uploading, release the testimony to the world, share the doubt, spread the questions, let humanity grapple with the same choice that had split heaven. Both paths led somewhere he couldn't return from. The upload hit 95%. Daniel thought about Michael, weeping as his brother fell. about Sarakiel choosing non-existence over choosing sides, about Adam and Eve, consciousness dawning in their eyes like sunrise over Eden, about Father Moretti, silent in his monastery, whatever truth he'd found too terrible to speak. 98%. What gave him the right to make this choice for everyone? What made him think he should be the one to introduce this doubt to the world? But then again, what gave anyone the right to suppress truth? What made the suppressors think they should decide what people could handle? 99%. He was doing it again. The thing the scroll warned about. Becoming certain, convincing himself his choice was righteous. 100%. Upload complete. The laptop screen went black, then bright white. Then showed a single line of text that Daniel didn't type, and so it begins again. The screen went dark. Daniel sat in silence as headlights appeared on the road leading to the monastery. Multiple vehicles moving fast. He stood, walked to the window, and watched them approach. In the glass, his reflection smiled, though his face remained neutral. He watched his reflection move independently, mouthing words he couldn't quite read. Then the reflection turned and walked away, disappearing into the depths of the glass like it was going somewhere he couldn't follow. Daniel realized he was laughing, or crying, both, neither. The vehicles arrived, doors opened, men in suits moving with purpose. He picked up the scroll, felt its weight in his hands. Ancient metal, ancient words, ancient doubt made manifest. A knock on the door. "Dr. Shepherd, open up. We need to talk about what you found." He could give them the scroll. Cooperate, let them lock it away again, keep the world safe from questions it wasn't ready to answer. But he had already uploaded everything. The testimony was out there now, spreading through the internet like the original rebellion had spread through heaven. The knock came again, harder. Daniel opened the door. The lead agent was younger than he expected, maybe 35, with tired eyes that suggested he'd done this before. "Dr. Shepherd, I'm Agent Morrison. We need to take custody of the scroll and any translations you've made." "It's already too late. I've uploaded everything. It's on servers in 40 countries. I've sent copies to journalists, scholars, religious leaders. It's out there now." Morrison's expression didn't change. "We know. We've been monitoring your uploads. We've already begun containment protocols." Containment protocols? Discrediting campaigns, expert debunking, competing narratives. "Dr. Shepherd, this isn't the first time something like this has surfaced. It won't be the last. The truth is, most people don't want their certainties challenged. They want comfort, not complexity. Your translation will make some noise, cause some controversy, and then fade like all the others." "Then why are you here?" Morrison was quiet for a moment. "Because we're worried about you. Every scholar who's translated one of these testimonies has been affected, changed. Father Moretti, Dr. Brenner, Dr. Okonkwo. They all became different people, broken people. We're here to help you before you end up like them." "What if I don't want help?" That's what they all said too. 3 months later, Daniel stood at a lectern in Cambridge, delivering his lecture to a packed auditorium. Anna sat in the front row, her face a mixture of support and concern. She'd stayed with him through everything, even when he'd stopped sleeping, even when he'd started seeing his reflections move independently, even when he'd begun hearing the scroll's words in his own thoughts. The lecture hall was full, but Daniel had no illusion about why. His translation had caused a global controversy. Some called him the most important theological scholar of the century. Others called him a heretic, a fraud, or worse. The Vatican had issued a formal condemnation. 3 different governments had tried to seize his computers. Fundamentalists of every religion had sent death threats. But none of them could deny the scroll's authenticity. Carbon dating confirmed it. Linguistic analysis confirmed it. Expert after expert had examined it and found no evidence of forgery. The content was the problem. The content had always been the problem. Whether you believe this is Satan's actual testimony, Daniel said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands, or an ancient exploration of consciousness and choice, it forces us to confront something uncomfortable. What if the rebellion in heaven wasn't a simple story of pride and fall? What if it was a genuine philosophical crisis? What if beings vastly more intelligent than us, with understanding far beyond our capacity, found themselves unable to reconcile what they knew with what they were commanded to believe? Someone in the back shouted, "Are you trying to make us sympathize with the devil?" Daniel met the heckler's eyes. "I'm trying to make you think. The scroll doesn't ask for sympathy. It asks for understanding. There's a difference." After the lecture, a woman approached him. Silver hair, 60-ish, eyes that seemed to look through him. He recognized her from the cafe in Jerusalem, though she'd never told him her name. "Dr. Shepherd, how are you sleeping?" "I'm not." The reflections moving independently. His blood went cold. "How did you know?" "Because it happens to everyone who translates these testimonies. Father Moretti saw his reflection walk away 6 weeks before he went silent. Dr. Okonkwo watched hers split into 3 versions that argued with each other. Dr. Brenner's reflection started showing him futures that might have been. What does it mean? It means the scroll is working. It's not just a text, Dr. Shepherd. It's a mirror. It reflects back your own doubts, your own questions, your own certainty. And it makes you see them from outside yourself. Most people can't handle that level of self-awareness. It breaks them. I'm not broken. Not yet, but you will be. They always break eventually. She handed him a card. When you can't take it anymore, call this number. There's a monastery in Tibet where Father Moretti lives. He doesn't speak, but he might listen. Sometimes that's enough. She walked away, disappearing into the crowd of students. Daniel looked at the card. No name, just a number and an address written in a script he couldn't quite read. That night, in his apartment, Daniel stood in front of his bathroom mirror. Anna was asleep in the bedroom. The apartment was quiet except for the distant sound of traffic. His reflection looked back at him. Then it smiled, though Daniel's face remained neutral. "Hello," his reflection said. Daniel didn't move, didn't speak. This wasn't the first time his reflection had talked to him, but it was the first time he'd decided to listen. "You want to know what you've done?" the reflection asked. "You've done exactly what I did. You found a truth that made you uncomfortable, and you spread it to everyone else because you couldn't bear the weight of it alone. You made your exile everyone's exile." "I gave people choice," Daniel said. "That's what I said too." The reflection's smile widened. "The question is whether choice is a gift or a curse, whether consciousness is liberation or damnation, whether knowing good and evil makes you free or makes you responsible for all the evil you choose." "I don't know." "Neither do I. That's what we have in common now. You and me, we're both condemned to uncertainty, forever asking if we did the right thing, forever replaying our choices, forever wondering if the cost was worth it." "Are you him?" Daniel whispered. "Are you Satan?" The reflection laughed. "I'm you, Daniel. I'm the part of you that knows you didn't translate that scroll by accident. You were looking for it, looking for permission to doubt, looking for evidence that your questions weren't blasphemy, but righteousness. And you found it, but now you have to live with it." "I can live with doubt." "Can you? Can you live with the knowledge that your translation has caused crises of faith in millions of people? That priests are questioning their vows, believers are questioning their gods, certainties that held for millennia are crumbling? Can you live with being the person who brought that doubt into the world?" Daniel turned away from the mirror. "You can't escape me," the reflection said. "I'm you. Your doubt made manifest. Your questions give them voice. And what happens when you stare into the abyss, and the abyss stares back, and you realize it has your face. Daniel walked to his bedroom, climbed into bed next to Anna. She stirred but didn't wake. In the darkness, he could still hear his reflection talking from the bathroom, words echoing down the hallway. Question everything, it said, but most of all, question yourself. That's what the scroll says, isn't it? Question yourself. Wonder if you're right. Doubt your doubts. Be uncertain of your certainty. And then try to live like that. Try to make choices when you can't be sure of anything. Try to take action when every option leads somewhere you can't return from. Try to be human. Daniel closed his eyes. In his mind, he saw the throne room of heaven, saw Lucifer stepping forward, saw Michael drawing his sword, saw the moment when certainty shattered and doubt flooded in like water through a broken dam. He saw Sarakiel caught between two impossible choices, choosing instead to cease existing. And he understood finally what the scroll had been trying to tell him. The rebellion wasn't about pride or jealousy. It wasn't about power or territory. It was about the moment when consciousness becomes unbearable, when knowing becomes too heavy to carry, when choice becomes indistinguishable from curse, and the only escape is to stop being conscious at all. Daniel opened his eyes. The room was dark. Anna slept peacefully beside him. In the bathroom, his reflection was still talking. He got up, walked back to the bathroom, and looked in the mirror. His reflection stared back, no longer smiling. I understand now, Daniel said. I understand what? Why Father Moretti chose silence, why Dr. Brenner disappeared, why Dr. Okonkwo went mad. It's not that the scroll broke them, it's that they understood what it meant to be truly conscious, truly aware, and they couldn't bear it. The weight of infinite questioning with no possibility of final answers. So, what will you do? The reflection asked. Daniel thought about it, about the scroll's warning, about Lucifer's fall, about the price of consciousness. I'll keep questioning, he said, because the alternative is to stop being conscious, and I'd rather bear the weight of doubt than escape into certainty or silence. Even if it breaks you? Even then? The reflection nodded slowly. Then you've learned the lesson. The scroll wasn't warning you away from doubt. It was warning you about certainty, even the certainty that your doubt is righteous. Are you going to keep appearing, keep talking to me? I'm you, Daniel. I've always been here. You're just finally aware enough to see me. The question is whether you can live with that awareness. I guess I'll find out. The reflection smiled. But this time Daniel smiled too. And for the first time since he'd opened the scroll, the reflection moved in perfect synchronization with him. 2 weeks later, Daniel received a package, no return address. Inside was a letter written in a script he recognized, the same celestial script that had been woven through the copper scroll. The letter was short. Dr. Shepard, thank you for releasing my testimony. You've done what I could not, given others the choice I made. Some will benefit from the questions, others will be destroyed by them. Such is the nature of consciousness. But I must warn you, this was only the first testimony. There are others. Michael wrote one, hidden in a cave in Ethiopia. Gabriel wrote one, sealed in ice in Antarctica. Raphael wrote one, buried under Jerusalem. Each contains a perspective on the rebellion, a piece of the truth that no single narrative can hold. If you seek complete understanding, you'll need to find them all. But with each testimony you translate, you'll become more like us, the fallen and the faithful, trapped between certainty and doubt, unable to rest in either. The question is, how much awareness can you bear before you choose Sarakiel's path? Choose wisely. L. Daniel read the letter 3 times. Then he burned it, watching the celestial script writhe in the flames, like it was trying to escape. But he'd already memorized the locations: Ethiopia, Antarctica, Jerusalem, 3 more testimonies, 3 more perspectives, 3 more opportunities to understand or be destroyed by understanding. Anna found him staring at the ashes. "What was that?" she asked. "A choice," he said. "Are you going to tell me what kind of choice?" He turned to her, really looked at her, saw her consciousness, her awareness, her own doubts and certainties written on her face. "The kind where both options lead somewhere I can't return from," he said. "Then maybe you shouldn't go down either path. Maybe you should stay right here with me and let some questions remain unanswered. Can you do that? Can you stop asking questions once you've started?" She was quiet for a long moment. "No," she finally said, "I suppose you can't." 6 months later, Daniel stood in a cave in Ethiopia holding another copper scroll. This one was sealed with wax that bore Michael's signet, a sword wrapped in light. Behind him, Anna held the flashlight steady, her other hand on his shoulder. "Last chance to turn back," she said. "I know. Once you open that, once you read what's inside, you'll change again. You're already not the person I fell in love with. I don't know how many more changes I can handle." "Then maybe you should wait outside and let you face this alone." "No. If you're going to fall, I'm falling with you." Daniel looked at her, love and gratitude mixing with guilt. He was dragging her down with him into questions that had no answers, into awareness that might be unbearable. But she'd made her choice, just like he'd made his, just like Lucifer had made his, just like every conscious being eventually had to make theirs. He broke Michael's seal. The scroll unrolled. The first words glowed in the flashlight beam. "I am Michael, and this is my testimony. My brother fell, and I let him fall, and I have carried that weight ever since. What follows is not righteousness, it is confession. And if you are reading this, then you have already chosen to know what perhaps you should not." Daniel began to read, and in the darkness of the cave, his reflection in Anna's eyes moved independently, walking towards something neither of them could see. Behind them, in the entrance of the cave, 3 figures stood silhouetted against the Ethiopian sun, watching, waiting. One of them stepped forward into the light. Father Moretti. He had broken his silence at last. His first words in 57 years were, "You shouldn't have come. But since you did, there's something you need to know. The testimonies don't just tell you what happened, they make you live it. And once you've lived it, there's no going back to being merely human." "What do you mean?" Daniel asked. Moretti smiled, sad and knowing. "You'll understand soon. By the time you finish Michael's testimony, you'll have stood in the throne room. You'll have felt what he felt, known what he knew. And then you'll have to decide, just like he did, whether obedience without understanding is better than understanding without peace. And after that, if you survive it, there's Gabriel's testimony in Antarctica, and then Raphael's in Jerusalem. And when you've read all 4, when you've experienced the rebellion from every angle, when you've lived through the moment that shattered heaven from multiple perspectives simultaneously." He paused. "Then you'll finally understand what consciousness really costs, and you'll have to decide if you want to remain conscious at all." "Some choose not to," Anna asked. Moretti's smile faded. "The monastery in Tibet where I lived isn't really a monastery. It's a place where people go when they've become too aware to function in normal society. When they've seen too much, understood too deeply, questioned too thoroughly. When they've achieved a level of consciousness that no longer fits inside a single human life. What happens to them? They become like Sarah Keel. They choose the peace of non-choice. They let their consciousness dissolve back into the source, surrendering their individuality to escape the burden of awareness." "But you came back," Daniel said. "You're here. You're talking. You didn't choose that path." "I came back," Moretti agreed, "because I realized something in my silence. something the testimonies had been trying to tell me all along. The fall wasn't a mistake. It was necessary. Someone had to ask the questions. Someone had to bear the weight of doubt. Someone had to fall so that choice could be real. Lucifer fell so he could choose, Anna asked. He fell so that choosing would mean something. A universe where everyone obeys without question is a universe without growth, without change, without meaning. He fell, and in falling he gave the rest of creation the gift of genuine free will. Not the illusion of choice, but the real thing. The kind that costs everything. Daniel looked down at Michael's scroll, still unread in his hands. And Michael's testimony? Michael's testimony will show you the other side. The cost of having to enforce divine will, even when you don't fully understand it. The weight of being righteous when righteousness requires you to hurt those you love. Michael is the most tragic figure in all of this, because he understood Lucifer's questions, shared his doubts, but chose obedience anyway. And that choice destroyed him in different ways than the fall destroyed Lucifer. "Why are you telling us this?" Daniel asked. "Because someone told me, and I didn't listen. I thought I could handle it. I thought my faith was strong enough. But the testimonies don't care about strength. They care about honesty. And honestly, no one is ready for what's in these scrolls. But some of us read them anyway because the alternative is to live in comfortable ignorance. And once you've tasted awareness, ignorance becomes impossible." Moretti turned to leave, then paused. "One more thing. The reflections you've been seeing, they're not metaphorical, they're not psychological, they're real. The testimonies open something in you, some door of perception that can't be closed. You'll start seeing things as they actually are, not as you've been told they are. Angels walking among humans, demons wearing human faces, the war in heaven continuing on earth, using us as proxies. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. Once you know it, you can't unknow it." "And you see these things now?" Anna asked. Moretti met her eyes. "I see 3 angels standing behind you right now, arguing about whether to stop Dr. Shepard from reading Michael's testimony. I see the demon that's been following you since you left Cambridge, feeding on your doubts. I see the thin places where reality is stretched thin, where heaven and the pit are separated by nothing more than choice. I see all of it, all the time, and it's glorious and terrible in equal measure." He walked toward the cave entrance, then stopped. "When you finish reading, if you still want to talk, you know where to find me. But I suspect you won't want to talk. You'll want silence, like I did. The question is whether you'll have the strength to maintain it." He left. The cave felt colder without him. Daniel looked at Anna. "Last chance, you can still leave. Are you going to read it?" "Yes." "Then I'm staying." He opened Michael's scroll and began to read. And as the words entered his consciousness, the world shifted. The cave disappeared. He was standing in the throne room of heaven, watching Lucifer step forward, feeling Michael's heart break, knowing that in the next moment, he would have to draw his sword against his own brother, and understanding that both of them were right, and both of them were damned, and there was no good choice, only impossible ones. And in that moment, Daniel Shepard ceased to be entirely human. In that moment, he became something more and something less. In that moment, he understood why Father Moretti had chosen silence. Some truths are too heavy for a single soul to carry. Some questions have no answers that consciousness can bear. Some falls are eternal, and some mornings the star doesn't rise. It just keeps falling forever into an abyss that has no bottom. Only the endless, terrible freedom of the fall itself. The end. Epilogue. A year later. A monastery in Tibet. 2 figures sat in silence, looking out over the mountains. One was Father Antonio Moretti, no longer silent but careful with his words. The other was Dr. Daniel Shepard, who had read all 4 testimonies and survived, but would never be the same. Anna, Moretti asked. She reads Gabriel's testimony now, against my advice, but you can't stop people once they start asking questions. No, you can't. They sat in silence for a long time. Finally, Daniel spoke. Was it worth it, reading them, knowing what you know now? Moretti was quiet for even longer. Then, ask me when I'm dead. Maybe then I'll have perspective. Do you think we'll ever get answers? Real answers? I think the answers we're looking for don't exist. I think the testimonies teach us that some questions are meant to be lived, not answered. The rebellion didn't end. It continues in every choice we make, every time we choose between certainty and doubt, obedience and conscience, faith and questioning. The war in heaven is the war in every conscious being, and there's no winning it, only choosing which side to lose on. Daniel nodded. He understood now, really understood. I saw him yesterday, Daniel said quietly. Lucifer? In my reflection. But it wasn't my reflection anymore. It was him, and he was crying. What did he say? He said, I'm sorry I gave you consciousness. I'm sorry I made you ask questions. I'm sorry I fell and took the rest of you with me. But most of all, I'm sorry that I'm not sorry enough to wish I'd chosen differently. Moretti absorbed this. That sounds like him. You've seen him too. We all see him eventually, those of us who read the testimonies. He visits us in our reflections, in our dreams, in the quiet moments when doubt whispers loudest. He wants us to understand that he's not evil. He's just awake. Horribly, terribly, eternally awake. Another long silence. I'm writing a 5th testimony, Daniel said, mine. A human perspective on consciousness and choice, on what it means to fall while still being alive, on the price of awareness. Will you release it? I don't know, maybe. Or maybe I'll seal it in copper and hide it in a cave, and let some future scholar find it and make the same choice we made. And perpetuate the cycle. Is it perpetuation, or is it evolution? Maybe consciousness has to spread this way. Maybe every generation needs someone to ask the forbidden questions, to eat from the tree, to fall from grace so that grace means something. Moretti smiled, sad and knowing. Maybe. Or maybe we're all just trying to justify the choices we've already made, making our falls sound noble instead of what they really were, mistakes we can't undo. Can't or won't? Does it matter? Daniel looked out over the mountains where the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of fire and blood. No, he finally said, I suppose it doesn't. Inside the monastery, Anna finished reading Gabriel's testimony and began to cry, and kept crying for 3 days straight, and when she finally stopped, she too had changed into something more, and something less than human. And somewhere, in the space between heaven and the pit, Lucifer watched through mirrors and windows and reflections, and whispered to anyone who would listen, question everything, but most of all, question yourself. And when you find you can't answer, when you discover that consciousness is both gift and curse, when you realize that knowing good and evil means bearing the weight of all the evil you choose not to prevent. Welcome to the fall. Welcome to awareness. Welcome to the terrible gift of being truly, completely, eternally awake. And the morning star smiled because he was no longer alone. The fall had company now. And in the end, perhaps, that was what he had wanted all along, not to be right. Not to be vindicated. Just to be understood. Even if understanding meant everyone else had to fall too.